morning, everybody. Welcome to City Life. It is freezing out there. My name is Linda Bown. I'm your host. I have former Selectman Reault from Tewksbury and former Select Woman Hillari Wennerstrom. She's also a former school committee woman. So they were there together, actually, when it was a very rocky time in Tewksbury. So we've made some changes, and we're going to move on in the new golden era now. So, but we've had some interesting things happen in Tewksbury, unfortunately, that are going to cost us a lot
I
of
hope
money.
you're not thinking it's the selectmen that are in their golden era.
Yeah.
No offense to some of my former colleagues, but maybe I do mean it that way. Not really.
Yeah, it was a rough time. Having been in that seat and the Lowell sun is not your friend.
And being in the seat in rocky times as well. And some of them are rocky and some of them are not, right?
Yes.
So I was on the board for 12 years. I would say the first 10 years were not rocky at all.
Well, you were very lucky then.
Yeah, but the certainly the last year and arguably the last 2 years
Yeah.
was really rocky, especially the last year, and then I've been off the board going on 3 years now.
Wow, that's hard to
It'll be
believe.
3 years in May, and Hillary has been off for 2 years when we get to May. So it's really interesting to see things that we fought against has now come to light, and the people in Tewksbury, just so they know, I know it's been out there, they've been talking about it on.
Oh, everybody's been
media.
calling me, yes.
Oh, yeah, asking you specifics, and I know you had Colin on here, and
Well, I felt bad for Colin because it had just happened on a Monday, and poor Colin was on a Wednesday. He kind of looked at me like, "How do you know that?"
Yeah.
It's we had a settlement. You guys can explain it.
Well, it's
Going to cost
Hillary,
Tewksbury.
did you want to go?
Oh, I was just gonna say, well, I don't know 100% it's settled. I mean, we got the judgment against the town, and I think that there's some actions that the town can potentially take. There's obviously full force with the officer that was wrongfully terminated. And, Rick and I believed that all along, that he should not have been terminated. So we'll see. It's in the order of, close to $750,000 that will end up going back to, this individual.
And that's just the arbitration. That's been the decision of the arbiter, who's a retired judge, and I for the first time I got to read the decision from the arbiter last night, and somebody sent it to me because they knew I was going to be here today. So it was the town fired a police officer 38 months ago, but really the story starts before that, when David Robson was up for re-election and Steve Nocco made a decision not to decide. And we worked very well together. We talked things out. We made common sense decisions. Yet, a lot of our decisions were, we had an adversary in the police chief. We didn't agree with a lot of the things that were happening, from disciplinary action against multiple police officers that we didn't agree with. And then there was information of executive sessions being leaked to Lowell Sun, mostly about police officers, but then in one case it was even, the case that the situation we dealt with the animal control officer. So
Which happened to be Dave's dad.
Right.
And Dave, I feel bad. I just I'm going to have you go back to it. But Dave was a young man. And we're always saying, why don't young people run? Why don't they run? He was a young man. He was an accountant. He was getting his master's. He was really an asset to the town. And they went after him. In fact, Lowell's son, I don't know how they ever got away with it. They didn't even mention anything about him, ever. when he was running. It was all about his father. It just happened his father had the same name. And I just feel so, and I thought they abused Mike Dillon as well, who ended up being right on most of the things that he proposed and fought against. And so it's, shame on us for attacking the young people. So,
Well,
And I would say it went
Personally.
above and beyond even that. There was,
absolutely.
meetings, and, David and I live in the same general area of town. There were meetings we were followed home at, and it's not hard to see you're being followed when you pull into your driveway and the cruiser, circles your road and goes back out, knowing that you just came from a meeting. There was a lot of behind the scenes that just, and again, we can surmise who was behind it, and it was a lot. It was above and beyond what anyone should have to deal with when.
neither of you ran
office.
again either.
after 4 terms, I did not.
I ran, my last year was COVID, and running during COVID was challenging. And I'll never forget, a good friend of mine, Warren Allgrove, former selectman, said, I wish I hadn't run that last time when he ran and lost to Buddy Hackett. And he said, it's not that he didn't want to lose, he just said, I knew my heart wasn't in it. Mm-hmm. And he said, and that's why I lost. And I took those words to heart and said, you know what, my heart isn't in it right now. That's not to say it, I won't at some point go back into something, but my heart wasn't in it. And I think, same thing for you, right? There was a lot that you just had going on personally, me as well, that you just said, I'm going to take a step back.
These are the good times that I want to remember. People say, "Oh, do you miss it?" And and I say, it's not a matter of missing it. And they say, "Oh, just you're not there anymore. Just give it up." And I'm like, you can't give it up. So these decisions are coming to light now. I played a role in these decisions, and as Hillary did. And I just want to go back to the attacks on David Robson, specifically in the Lowell Sun, and they were insinuating that he wasn't living in town, but they continued to print about our relationship with the police chief, and it spread a negative light in town. So when the election results were in, the Lowell Sun printed that the administrator and the police chief were out celebrating with 2 people that had won that election, that got more votes than David Robson. They were out celebrating, and right there, then and there, they announced that who was going to be the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. And so, and we're on the board, right? So it was. It happens. I guess, that's their right. They won. But it was very evident that they were going to support the chief. The chief never brought this police officer, a 25-year veteran plus, that had an exceptional record, has an exceptional record. He's done so many community things. He's a graduate at Tewksbury High School, lifelong resident in town, and just, a very good police officer, a member of the SWAT team. He was there when, with the SWAT, went looking for the Boston bomber. He was in harm's way. Mm-hmm. These guys had just been in a gunfight. They had just murdered a police officer. It was some serious stuff. So this is the type of police officer that we're talking about. And the police chief, when Steve Nocco and David Robson were on the board with myself and Hillary and Ron Cohane, he would never bring this police officer up to be fired, which he accused him of abusing prescription medication. I'm going to put it in those words. It's not exactly right. And it wasn't right. This man had 14 surgeries, and he was under medical care. He was taking prescriptions for his operations, for both sleep issues and pain issues that he was dealing with. And the town just took that after this election, and there was criminal charges. And in this decision, there was a state police investigation where the state police said, hey, there's no probable cause for a criminal complaint here, and we're dropping the charges on this officer. Well, then also in the decision, it states that the police chief and the deputy chief were in communication with the district attorney, and the charges got reinstated. So this man was subject to a criminal trial, which he won. And they fired in the Tewksbury, new board that came in, when Katerina Kalabokis and Eric Eldridge got elected, and with Ron Cohane, they supported the police chief when he brought before the board to fire this police officer. And it was supported by Matt Hansen, the town administrator. It was supported by Darren Klein, the town council. And it was obviously supported by the police chief and the deputy chief, who is now our police chief. So they all strongly supported this measure, and they voted to fire him, which both Hillary and I were adamantly against. We talked, but in these meetings, but they didn't listen to us at all. I mean, they were accusing him that things that there was no evidence of. And I'm sorry if I'm going on, but this is a long story, and I think the people should know about it. And honestly, I didn't feel like this yesterday. I didn't want to really talk about this, but after reading that decision, the fires just started going in me again, and so they before this officer even went to criminal trial, they fired him, which was 38 months ago, and so. They now he had to go to criminal trial, which he won, and the arbitration case kept getting pushed out, delayed, and it's 38 months until he gets a decision. And let me tell you, if you were in a prize fight, it would be like this big build-up to the fight, big build-up, for months and months and months. Finally, the fight happens. And you're doing all the talking and how great you are, and you get knocked out. You get knocked out with one punch. And the town, this decision is so it puts a town in a position that it was so egregious in its decision that I've talked to police officers from Lowell, Dracut, Westford, Tewksbury, Chelmsford. I know a lot of people, and I said, have you ever heard of a arbitration decision where not only the police officer gets his job back and he gets back pay, but he's also awarded overtime, lost details, vacation
How do you
time,
even figure
sick
that out?
time, and interest on the money. So the state, I believe state law, I think it's right. I don't want to misspeak, but I think they usually use 12% annual interest as that's the standard. So basically, easy math, right? 12% is 1% a month.
Yeah.
So if you have been out for 38 months, you're getting 38% of that check. The next month is 37 months, right? We're going backwards. You get 37% of that. But, there is calculations that you do if there was unemployment collected, that comes off the number, and all these, you have to be a pretty good mathematician, a pretty good accountant to figure out. And I'm sure that the town and it's the union that's fighting for their police officer, right? So they're going to disagree on numbers, and they're going to have to come to a decision. But one thing that this has not even gone before the Board of Selectmen yet. It's going to go in front of the Board of Selectmen in executive session on Monday. And one thing I know, talking to several lawyers, more than several lawyers, is that a decision like this, you don't appeal a decision like this. It has, first of all, it costs a lot more money to appeal.
Oh, my goodness. And how do you restore, the money is a huge thing for us in the town. How do you restore somebody's reputation?
Well, thank you, Linda. That is so important because they attacked this man's reputation. They attacked his integrity. Can you imagine? He was working in Alice training, active shooter training in school. He was fired from that position, and I was told, I don't know if it's true, but I mean, I don't have any reason to doubt it, that there was calls made from the police department that they shouldn't employ this man in this position. So not only did they fire him, they got him fired from what he was doing, not outside the police department, but police related.
They blacklisted the guy.
Yeah.
Talk about
They
weaponization.
blacklisted.
I don't know if that's a term you can use in 2025, but
But,
blacklisted.
these people, and this is where, I know this young man personally for a very long time. I was a basketball coach at the high school, and I coached him when he was in the 9th grade. And so if he's 55 years old now, and I'm guessing, I'm probably going back to when he was 14 or 15 years old. And so I've known this man in the area of 40 years. And you're proud of these guys. He's a police officer in town, and
He was one of our youngest sergeants, wasn't he?
Oh,
At
yeah,
the time,
I think-
I
yeah,
was
I
on
heard-
the
yeah.
assessment team.
Yes.
I didn't work for the town at the time.
Yes.
That promoted him, and I believe he was one of our youngest sergeants.
So when I look into the eyes of select board members, right, and we're talking about the people that supported the police and the deputy's decision, and I'm amazed how town council, I believe, and I think Hillary, I think you would agree with me 100% that that's bad legal advice.
Well, since
I mean, I just felt like we constantly were throwing money at a situation that, at best, and I've been to arbitration on a number of issues with town employees at different times, it's very rare that the arbitrator will take one side or the other. You know when you go into arbitration that they're going to split the baby, right? And they normally do. And somebody ends up a little bit, more whole than somebody. But to outright lose and not get, I mean, I don't think we got anything in our favor in that judgment.
Well, it's a tribute to, but that's a little, I don't think the Little Sun's going to print that, by the way.
I mean, they
Rick was
haven't,
right.
they've had, I was told they got a copy of the judgment. I was told they've been, asked multiple times, where's the story, but, they'd have to admit their own culpability in some of this. Because I
Yeah.
believe, they fueled the fire. And I'll,
Well, they destroyed young David, and I've talked about it often, because we're always trying to get people to run. And when you get someone the caliber of David Robson, it just broke my heart to see what they did to him, because it had nothing to do with him and
We
his
had an
qualifications.
Linda, and first of all, I've always thought that Hillary is a subject matter expert when it comes to.
Hey, Rick, just grab that mic, pull it to you a little bit.
Especially in the area of employees. She knows union contracts, or through her work, through her experience on the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, a very experienced elected official in town. I've served a long time. I've lived a long time in town. Graduated from Tewksbury High School. Very proud of that. When we looked across the room at the board members, I always felt that they had no interest in our knowledge. They had no interest in what we would try to put forth. They had their own agenda. They were supporting a police chief blindly, even though they continue to make accusations on this police officer. And you know what? You know what the judgment says time and time and time and time again? There's no evidence to support this claim. There's no evidence to support this claim. But over and over and over again in the judgment, people will read it for themselves, town members. And I was wondering, how are we going to pay for this? And because whatever that number is, it's going to be a large number, and it's going to be followed by a civil suit, which could put the town in, a liability into the millions with an S on there. So, I was suggesting that we assess every taxpayer in town. And when I mentioned that, the eyebrows, of course, raised, and what? I don't want my taxes to go up and all this. And I'm like, you know what? I do. I want to write a check, and I want to bring it to town hall, and I want everybody in town to have to do that. You know why? Because then they'll know that there's consequences for the people you vote for. And this wasn't an isolated incident. This was happening time
Can
and
we
time
get a
again.
pass if we didn't vote that way?
Well, no, and that's even more, because when you don't show up to town meeting and or you don't vote, then it's an easier path for certain people to get elected. Mm-hmm. And myself included. When I ran 4 times, and I won 4 times, but twice I ran unopposed. So I didn't really, win.
Yeah.
People knew me.
Well, Rick, what's the big fat paycheck out there?
Oh, it was zero. It was $0. and you know
Zero,
what?
zero, zero, comma, zero, zero,
When
zero.
I got on the Board of Selectmen, it was 0. And then now there may be, and
it's
then
2,000?
it might be $2,000 or something like that. But here's the thing too, a lot of people thought, well, you get health insurance. No, you did not. You got no health insurance. And I think my first 7 or 8 years on the board, we didn't get paid at all. And then there was a small stipend. I used to joke and said, I got much more money from the town to coach basketball than I did to, sit on
Run
the
the
Board of
town.
Selectmen
I got two
as
checks-
chairman a couple
Two
of
checks
times.
I'm gonna read you, so it's still 0, they still pay the selectmen 0?
2,000, I believe.
$2,000 now, okay, good. Now, text says, sounds like you have a terrible police chief in Tewksbury.
Well,
I got 2 texts,
So-
and then you can talk all you want, Rick.
okay.
It's pretty tough to have confidence in your police department when your chief is incompetent. Page 2. You had it right at the beginning of the show, don't trust the Lowell Sun. And while I have your attention, you need to drive little Hillary or little Rick to school today. It's wicked.
Yeah.
It's very slippery too, so yes. Please be careful.
Everything froze,
Even
yes.
Especially, you hear about people slipping and falling on the ice, and it's hard.
I've
you
already
can't,
done
go
that
back
this
to
year.
bed.
They said Worcester delayed school opening because they did not want the children standing outside
It's
waiting.
not
for
gonna
them.
help 2 hours from now. It's still gonna be icy.
Yeah.
Well, it gives the trucks more time to put more,
Well-
sand and salt down, so.
And coming in from Tingsboro, I don't know if you saw the people running running. They did have lights on, but running,
Yeah.
Today's a treadmill day, folks.
Yes.
Those 2 comments, and, the Lowell Sun, it's, I never felt that when the times got tough, our opinion did not get published in the Lowell Sun. It was very, very supportive of the new board and the police chief and the deputy chief, who is now our chief. So just so you know, that the police chief has retired, and the deputy chief has been promoted to chief. And they are called out by the arbiter in this decision. So I know that people are going to want to read this. I hope everybody in town does. It'll be out there soon enough. I think.
But
it'll
how
be
would they get it?
published. I think it's going to be published, and there's going to be a link available at some point in time. See, what's happening now is the Board of Selectmen haven't even met on this issue. They're meeting Monday night, and they'll go into executive session, and they'll discuss, how they want to move forward. But in the meantime, we have a police officer that is owed his job back, and he's already been delayed 38 months. So if this message gets out to any of the sitting members of the select board, I would say, please, this police officer has endured enough. Give him his job back, give him what he's owed, and let's move on. Because moving on there is gonna be a civil suit. This was a very egregious action. And now, I mean, the Lowell Sun, they
Yes, sir.
supported these, and now they're gonna have to answer them.
Rick, I think the town should
Sorry.
welcome this cop back to work. Welcome the cop back to work.
Welcome to.
Welcome this cop back to work. Instead of give him his job, welcome the guy back to work.
So, John, I want to
And
say.
page two, are you going to use the same attorney that lost last time?
So listen.
I get a kick out of the town. Nobody, see, when the town lawyer screws up, you know what happens? Nothing. He's still going home
you
Friday at
can-
noontime. Nothing's going to happen to this guy. I would fire this guy in a heartbeat and get a winning lawyer. Your town has a crappy lawyer.
You're not going to get an argument from me,
Well,
and
I don't even know who the guy is. Maybe he's a
listen,
relative of mine, but
I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm very animated, and I can raise my voice at times, and I raise my voice against this town council multiple times, and I continually asked him, who do you represent? Do you represent the select board and the town of Tewksbury, or do you represent the administrator and the police chief?
They haven't done any better with any of the other boards, by the way.
So
well, the
this
question
is.
should be, who can fire this person?
Wait.
A guy or gal?
Let me distinguish
It's a
the
firm.
difference.
It's a firm. It
It's
was
a firm, yeah.
Well, who can hire or fire the firm?
The town manager
The
now.
town
So
manager
the
can-
town manager should fire this firm and go into one.
Well, I'm sure things will happen. I'm sure, one thing at a time, right?
We used to have a
First thing
town
is, please
council.
get the police officer back to work.
Yeah, welcome him
Well, I
back to
think
work.
We've always separated certain parts of town, the town's representation. We've had, when Charles Reault served as town council, he did not do a lot of labor issues.
Right.
And he was
And I
very
understand.
adamant. So this was a labor issue. So it is somewhat different than the firm that we, currently use for zoning, planning, conservation.
But firms don't have any skin in the game when they
Listen.
represent a town.
I want to say, I consider Charles Zeroulis, who was town council, not labor council.
I don't care who it was, I don't need the name.
But you have labor council and you have town council. This was labor council.
Right. So somebody that
we're talking
supposedly-
Well,
about.
I think you have lousy labor council.
Correct. And so.
That's my opinion. I don't care who the firm is.
Well, I mean.
I'd fire them.
Again, I'm a basketball guy, and I heard the term being passed around by labor council and administrators and police chiefs and members of the select board that this was going to be a slam dunk. And you know what?
It
There's
was,
a big
but not
difference
for us.
there's a big difference in basketball from dunking the ball and being dunked on. They got dunked on. They didn't, there was no slam dunk, for them. It was absolutely none. I brought the police chief into a public meeting, televised for the whole town.
Yeah.
Because of my concern that executive session information was being released to the Lowell Sun in regards to personnel issues. And I continually asked the police chief to get to the bottom of this. And then, we know the people who were involved. They at first it was anonymous, but then they put their names in the paper. So, these information, I asked the police chief specifically, straight up, did anybody call you about the executive session meeting that we had, because he wasn't in there? And his response to me was no. And that was not truthful. So I backed up and I said, listen, I'm not trying to catch you here or do anything. I just want the truth, and I want the situation to stop. And so it required that I had to bring him into a meeting, And again, the Lowell Sun, I bet you they've printed half a dozen times that I tried to force the police chief into executive session. And let me tell you something. I want to say this right now, John, in front of everybody. That was the furthest thing from the truth. I wanted it in public session. Here's the thing, and Hillary will tell you this is the way, and you know too, Linda. When you have a meeting and it involves an employee, the employee has rights. They can do it in an open session, they can do it in an executive session, and it's their choice. They can say it before the meeting, they can say it during the meeting, that they want to go into executive session. So, in case that employee does that, you have to put on the agenda that we possibly could go into executive session. So it's posted on there. What the Lowell Sun did is said, oh, you posted that it could go into executive session, so therefore that's what you wanted to do. What do they call that? Deductive reasoning or something like that? You're very good at the English language. You know?
I'll never forget the Lowell Sun article that mentioned my name 3 times and spelled my name 3 different times, 3 different ways in the same article. So, after that, that point in time, I lost any faith in their ability to have any kind of accurate reporting. And when I called and the reporter had some excuse, and I said, can I just talk to somebody a little bit higher up there? Because I'm just, I just wonder how you can operate in this way. And, I got, I think, like the section editor or somebody, and he said, his response was, well, it's hard to proofread stories. And I thought, isn't that your job? Like, isn't proofreading and accuracy a part of what you are? Like, it's one thing if you get the facts wrong or you misheard or misrepresented, but you had it in writing 3 different ways. So somebody didn't look and say, like, how do you really spell her name? That's something so basic. And again, I'm not saying I don't have a difficult name to spell, either Hillary or Wennerstrom, but when you spell it 3 different ways in the same story, somebody's not doing their job. And since that day, I refuse to pay online. People are like, why don't you get the Lowell Sun? I refuse to give them 1 penny of my hard-earned money.
Before I forget, because I have mentioned in the decision that it says there is no evidence to support every single accusation of the town. You know what else it says in there? And Hillary, you read this too, which is very scary. The arbiter, who's the judge, a retired judge, says that brings into the decision in the hearing both the deputy chief and the chief based some of their accusations, I'm trying to say this correctly, on speculation. So the chief and the deputy were basing their decision to fire a police officer on speculation. And the person that they hired to do an internal investigation did the same thing. Her accusations were based on speculation. Is that crazy? How if you're a select board member, how do you not, like, this was in front of the select board. So here's the other upsetting part. The state police did a criminal investigation. They found that there was no evidence to support a criminal charge. That report was available to the police chief, the deputy chief, the administrator, and it was withheld from myself and Hillary. That information. Now, did the other board members, were they aware of that report? There is some wording in the decision or in the investigations that's a possibility. So we would have to ask those select board members if they were aware of this report from the state police before they voted to fire this police officer. So purposely, and it's admitted to in during the arbitration hearing, that it was purposely withheld from Hillary and myself.
And I don't know what parts of executive session can still be, are still withheld. I know there's a lot of that, those minutes haven't been released, and I'm assuming they never will or will be, highly redacted. But, I think it was no secret that, Rick and I maintained until such time as that investigation was complete and until such time that there was, hard evidence or probable cause, you just don't fire somebody in the public sector because you think they might be doing something wrong. I mean, I think you talked about it when Colin was here. Like, when you run a private business, you can do certain things. When you're in the public, they expect a little bit higher of a standard. And so you can't just go around and fire people because you don't like them, especially people that work for a union and are under contract and you haven't proven they've done anything wrong.
Again, when I was on the board, we had a situation, again, and it was held, I'm sitting here listening to you because it was held, everything was completely different. And Charles Rules, I remember saying to us, under no circumstances do you judge, it has to be on technical issues, and don't get carried away or even think about and I think that human nature, I can understand, and I knew where he was coming from. It's very easy to get caught up in certain things, but I'm just amazed that the council gave you such poor advice.
So I would say that, and I really believe this, and he was not our labor counsel.
Rick, just hold your thought for a second.
Sure.
Unfortunately, the media, mainstream, local, are dishonest. Look how they treated President Trump compared to Biden. Shut them off. That's from Jay.
Yeah.
Next one, journalism isn't what it used to.
Oh, I know. It's embarrassing.
Back over to you, Rick, thanks.
Yeah.
Will it ever come back? I don't know.
No,
And where are the fact checkers? I mean,
that's all gone. Well, the problem is the younger generation doesn't read the paper. So my question is, what do you do about social media? Sure, it's nice to have the little son. You ever try calling Facebook? They don't take calls. So what do you do about the complaints that you get that selectmen did this, select woman did that, a select woman's cheating on his or her spouse, and that's it. That's on Facebook. How do you get rid of that?
well, Hillary was a victim of social media. She knows all about
I'm
that.
going to guess this cop was too.
Uh,
You can't. So what do you do about that? Nothing.
I've been called a lot of things on Facebook too, and it's funny it's in my head who said what, and eventually you see these people face to face, and they sing a different tune when you're right in front of them. It's I guess kind of a guy thing. Back in the day, it's let's go out down, let's put some gloves on and figure this thing out. I don't know.
Well, way back when I was, John and I first started on radio, I used to always get guests on the show whenever I could that were being maligned by the Lowell Sun, because I had been, as a selectman, I remember being in meetings and then reading it in the Lowell Sun and saying to myself, was I at the same meeting? I never said that, but if you say it on radio or TV, they can't misquote you. There it is.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference. But and that goes back to the 80s, and it was a disaster back then. Chris Scott was, as a matter of fact, the town council back then.
Yeah, I remember when I first got on the board, they were saying, they wanted to write a story. There's a new sheriff in town, and I'm like, no, you're not writing that.
Yeah, he was a reporter. I'm sorry.
But that was back when you could say something, and it would.
Well, you had some recourse, so you could go to the editor. You could go to. It may not work, but and also the town reporters have been. I'm sorry, he was the town reporter. That's where they used to get the start.
listen, a lot of this started too. This happened right in front of the Lowell Sun, and we've talked about this because the police chief accused me in a public meeting at a meeting of trying to throw everything against the wall to see what would stick. And I'm like, there's nothing farther from the truth. You're spending tens of thousands of dollars investigating your own police officers. Why can't I ask about that? Why do we have to do that? And why do you withhold, and why does the town administrator withhold that information from the Board of Selectmen? So we didn't know how much was being spent until we asked.
Now, let me ask both of you, back then, at that time when this happened, we did not have a manager form of government. Will there be any changes now that we have a manager form of government?
No, there won't. And so, I mean, I'll answer, and Hillary can, weigh in as well, but I did not support, and I said so in the meeting that we had to change the form of government was a November night, which was as cold as it is now, and during COVID, and there was a few hundred people in the meeting, and everybody who went to that meeting knew how they were going to vote, and so I forget what the vote was, but let's say it was like 150 to 90 for people supporting a change in government. And I spoke against that, and then I went right to my chair and I said to Hillary, I did not change one vote. Not one person is saying, you know what, I believe in what he's saying. And I largely didn't support it because I didn't believe that Matt Hansen should be
Well, that was the issue.
a town manager because of what we were dealing with, and I knew that. And so if Colin was the person that they were putting up, I would have supported that.
Yeah.
And so I do support a town manager right now.
And I'm
because
quite
it's Colin
excited about,
Loisel.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, hopefully we'll move
No,
on.
sorry, I have no heat at my house apparently, so
Oh,
trying to text somebody to get somebody out there.
Oh, my gosh. Of all days. Yikes.
Yeah, of all days.
Oh, my goodness
what type
gracious.
of heat do you have?
Forced hot air.
Is it gas or oil?
Gas.
Gas, yeah.
Do you
So
need
it's
to
not a
leave to
supply
go
issue.
get, do you need to leave to?
No, somebody's at the house right now.
It's warm here.
They're gonna start a fire in the fireplace.
Oh, well, we should have
Is there a
that.
reset button?
Oh, my goodness gracious. Oh.
Yeah.
It is very cold out there, folks. Not a good day for,
No.
and don't leave your little pets out or anything like that. And
Yeah.
drive the children to school.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'm happy with that, with Colin. I think that he's gonna bring some changes to the town.
And then,
But-
you
You
know,
know what?
hopefully Colin's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I mean, for some of the people that sat there and fought for the town manager, and again, we're very vocal about it being the person that left the position that, fought so hard to get himself to be the manager, was really just so that he could move along to another opportunity. Those people are in there, I would say, micromanaging Colin, wouldn't you say? That, to the extent that they can. And Colin, Colin's a strong person and a strong personality, and he does it, but at the end of the day, he works for them, and his livelihood and his success is dependent on them. But, I was in town hall for meetings, and when I needed to be. I had conversations with people when I had to have conversations with people. There are members of the Board of Selectmen that are in town hall, 3, it's only open 4 days a week, are in there 3, if not 4, those days of the week, walking around, asking people what they're doing and talking to them, and, making it very vocal about how they feel about
But
things.
do-
And those were the people that, said, oh, we don't need to micromanage anybody. Well, I think you're still in there micromanaging people.
Well, yeah, in Lowell, I mean, the councils get slapped, and definitely get slapped down if they do that. It's very, that the manager runs the city, and that's how this should be. I mean, I'm of the understanding that we still go to town meeting for policy. So I guess I'm a little leery about what the selectmen actually do now.
Well, I'm concerned, again, in this arbitration case, is who has the authority over this?
I would think-
And so it's a gray area, and,
I don't like gray area.
no, I don't either, but technically the select board have say in litigation. This is not litigation. So this is.
No, that's right. Well,
It's an employee arbitration, it's not litigation. So, but I've been told that it would be litigation or that because it's within the authority of the select board to appeal. Now, again, if you get knocked out with one punch, what are you gonna appeal? That, I can still win this fight?
Well, yeah, I used to always, have comments about Christine O'Connor constantly. Look at what they did to Dominic Lay. Appeal, and lose, lose, lose. And then you say, what are you doing? You're spending if you had to pay the bill, you wouldn't be doing that. The taxpayers' money.
That's correct. And here, let's say this arbitration hearing, at the end of the day, it's 500, 600, 700, or more, 1,000, right? But let's also add in, how much did we pay for legal fees?
Well,
How
incompetent legal fees, obviously.
How much did we pay police officers to replace this police officer on the shift, right? And we had to hire somebody. So now that money, you could say, is part of this decision. So you hired a police officer who's been on the payroll for 3 years that shouldn't have been on the payroll because this police officer should have had that job.
Well, we're not firing
So-
the police officer. I hadn't even thought about
No,
that.
so this decision impacts the town well over $1 million. And there is going to be a civil lawsuit that's already been filed where the police chief has been named in the suit and Matt Hansen has been named in the suit.
Both of which don't live in town.
They don't live in town, no.
So they're not going to have any,
They have no skin in the game now.
And I
either.
believe.
I guess
Well, they do
not.
if they're held personally liable. Insurance.
No,
will
but
cover
we're
so much.
defending, yeah, but we're
This
paying
has
for that.
So, yeah, we're paying for their defense, but if there's a judgment,
Oh.
I don't think they're free and clear. I think the possibility is they could end up paying some. I don't know.
I don't know what that
And I
the
think
bond
anything
issue
that's,
is.
that Rick and I have talked about today has been, has been revealed in that lawsuit, right? So the lawsuit itself now is public. So I don't think anything that, Rick and I are talking about today is not, like, you can go on lower courts and see the civil suit that's been filed, and there's, a lot of it refers to the judgment against the town and other circumstances that are revealed. So it's, we're
Was
also
this
not
just
sharing
one
anything.
officer, or were other officers targeted in different areas,
So-
different ways?
So there's
Was there a
been
pattern?
multiple police officers that have left the department, some under, under questionable circumstances. And there's others that have retired because of real issues, health issues or whatever it may be. But there was a huge turnover during the time that this chief was, the chief.
Well, I remember the union
I would say 8 to 10 police
a
officers.
similar thing happened, didn't it, to the union, the officer representing the union, and he was found he was rehired, or,
Yeah.
so I remember just thinking back to people that
This was before we were on the board?
no, it was during it,
Yeah.
so.
I don't remember anybody, there was no one fired and rehired other than the police officer we're talking about now. Yeah, so, but, over the years, Tingsborough's, had a history of of certain instances with.
Well, all
with-
departments do, I mean,
But there, yeah, but unfortunately, there was a large turnover, and a lot of that turnover was with your experienced police officers, so it impacted
yeah.
The town's police department, absolutely. But again, the Lowell Sun, they just praised the job that this man did, and I wonder what that, civil suits take years and years.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
But so the impact of that civil suit won't be probably heard for, 3 years.
I guess we ought to
4 years,
budget
5
for
years,
it.
Yeah.
Because as you drag it on, interest goes on,
It's a 7-year ride.
On a positive
Oh.
note for our police department, I believe next Monday we have a promotion of an officer.
Oh, good.
Who will be our first female lieutenant.
Oh,
Will be promoted next.
and who is that?
Cindy Shea.
Cindy Shea, so, and I had.
Congratulations.
I'm very proud of the fact, and this was just previous to Hillary being elected to the board, and but you were on the school committee at the time, that there was a recommendation from the police chief for a police promotion, and Cindy was not the recommendation for promotion, and after talking to the then police chief, which was Bill Mulligan, and then the deputy chief, who became our chief, and I talked to them about the process, and I went into the meeting and I made a recommendation that Cindy Weeks Shea be promoted to sergeant. And that was not the recommendation of the police chief, and it passed our board 5-0. And she's our first and only superior police officer in town. And proud of the fact, that she was awarded based on her qualifications, based on her service record. She was rightfully promoted to sergeant, and now she's going to lieutenant.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
That's good news.
A
I
very good
know
police
her.
officer.
Yes, she's,
And in this past administration, she was subject to a complaint
I
from
remember
the
that.
police chief as well. And it was like, really? So again, the police chief.
and we
accused
almost
me in a
lost her at that
meeting,
time.
Of throwing things against the wall to see what would stick. I'd be happy to debate, that fact and debate the things that went on.
Well, unfortunately, he and the administrator are long gone, so they've moved to green pastures, so you're not gonna,
Yeah, and it's concerning, though, that
And we're also
the
here.
current chief supported, strongly supported this. And so, wouldn't you think that there's an apology due to this police officer from multiple, including from town council to town administrator at the time, all the way down the line? Don't they think he's deserved an apology?
well, again, I'll go back to how do you repair his reputation?
Yeah, it won't happen. I'll apologize to
And
him.
the
I'm very
stress-
sorry- I'm very sorry for what happened to you, what wrongfully happened to you, on behalf of many people in the town of Tewksbury. And I'm very sorry for what happened to that officer. I did everything I could to prevent it.
Well, the stress takes years off your life as well. I hate to mention the medical aspect of it, but it
For sure.
definitely does. And you've been through stress before, but the type of stress that he must have gone through all those years is, I don't know how you repay that or
No,
compensate that.
It's a real thing, because, these men and women have families, they have spouses, they have mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, and it impacts the whole family.
Yeah,
And I think you'll see that come out in a civil suit.
yeah. So, not a good
Linda,
look on
last
my
night
little
I said,
town.
I'll slightly touch on this, but I won't get into it, boy, anybody that knows me, I'm not going to keep my mouth shut when I think that the people need to know what's happening. And
And it's not the only shoot, that's the other thing,
It-
just like, I've seen here, and Drake had went through it, and Lowell has gone through it, and you see these suits against the city or the town, and there's usually not just one, there's, so I think that we have some others coming down the road that might not
yeah,
end well.
on a completely different note, but what related to Tingsboro, Bob Yucca passed away last week, and for the townspeople that didn't know this, but Bob Yucca played Major League Baseball, AAA Major League Baseball, AAA baseball with Chief Charles Chronopoulos.
Oh, at the Braves?
They were actually roommates. And Bob Yucca was a close friend of my father-in-law's, and I used to go to baseball games and sit up in the booth when he was broadcasting for the Milwaukee Brewers. And then being in the police chief's office, if you ever went in Charlie Chronopoulos' office, there was pictures of him in his baseball uniform and player shots and with the Braves right across the chest. And while I was sitting with Bob Yucca, I said to him, "Hey, Bob, you came up through the Braves organization." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, my buddy's father, he came up through the Braves organization. I think he's about your age." And he kind of rolled his eyes and he said, "Yeah, what was his name?" And I said, "Charles Chronopoulos." And he looked at me and he said, "What did you say?" And I said, "Charles Chronopoulos." He said, "He's a cop in Massachusetts?" I said, "No, he's police chief in my hometown." And he said, "Oh my God," he said, "I need to get a hold of him. I need his number." And I said, "Well, you can call the police station in Tingsboro, but you got to wait until after the Winslow School is in, because he's directing traffic in front of the kindergarten and first grade at the Winslow School." So I gave him a time to call, and he did. And the next year, Chuck Chronopoulos, Charlie's son, and myself, who are very good friends, I'm good friends with Chuck and Chris, we took, my father-in-law took us and the police chief to a Milwaukee Brewers game, and we all sat in the booth with Bob Yucca.
Nice.
Gotta go to break, we'll be back, thanks.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, well, that was a nice,
yeah, so...
welcome to City Life, this is, I'm Linda Bown, I'm your host. That was a pretty picture, but don't believe it, it's freezing out there. It looked pretty, but awful. I have former Selectman Rick Rowe and former Selectwoman Hillari Wennerstrom and former school committee
I want you to
woman.
take notice of the flag. The flag is flapping, so it's wicked cold and windy.
Yeah,
So drive little Rick or little Hillary to school today, please.
just dreadful, very, very, zero folks, so bundle them up and drive them if you have children.
So rest in peace, Mr. Baseball, Bob Euchre, and hopefully he's out
And
there playing
with
catch,
Charlie,
playing the baseball with.
we miss Charlie.
with
Charlie was,
Oh.
we got
What
spoiled with Charlie.
happened to cops like Charlie, Lowell, Tingsboro had Charlie Chronopoulos.
Yep.
Nice. He was just a friendly guy.
Yeah.
Lowell had a guy by the name of Mario Seppi, just a
Oh, yeah. I know.
friendly guy. And those were the cops we grew up with. Where are those, what cops?
But when we were kids, we had Tiny Mulligan in the center, in downtown Lowell, and he was just, everybody knew
In
Tiny.
2025, what are the kids don't know
They're
cops'
right.
names.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We
It's moved to, I think during certain periods of time, police officers got a very bad rap. And again, sometimes it's one apple spoils the bunch, and sometimes it's, a few things happen, but you're right, like that connection that you have to those kinds of people are gone. And whether it's, one or two bad stories out there or one or two things that have happened, but it's just a different time. I remember I moved to town when the police chief would be crossing the kindergartners. And so, and first graders, they just grew up knowing who he was. Now, cops come around and kids automatically think like somebody's in trouble. There's not
Yeah.
this feeling of, camaraderie or community.
Well, in Lowell, I think they're turning that up. You're seeing them bringing it back to, community policing and that being a concept that they're working on. I'm hoping that's going to come around again. I know it's a little harder in the town because of the distances and,
I was told multiple times by our retired police chief and our current police chief that the days of Charlie Chronopoulos are gone, and they can't do things like that anymore, and they're bound by law, and I just think that's BS.
Why can't they do things like that anymore?
I agree, John. They can if they want to, but there's a double standard there, and they do what they want to do. There was, as the arbiter report, right, says, there's no evidence to support these claims on every single claim, but guess what? They did it anyways. So they do what they want to do.
With government, Rick, we've backed ourselves into a corner. We're dealing with people who can't be fired. No matter what happens, you can't get fired.
Yeah.
And that's the environment we live in.
Well,
And
except for-
when you run into
You
a
can be fired.
town hall person, or a city hall person, or a state house person, and you want something, and they can grant it, they just say, good luck with that.
When we brought the police chief in to talk in public meeting about, these leaks to the Lowell Sun, there were people outside holding signs. We support our blue. We support our chief. There was a group of people out there. Some of them were former Board of Selectmen members, and then some of them were town employees. So I invite all those people to hold a sign for our police officer, Mark Bork, when he comes back to work. Please be out there supporting him, holding a sign, and really show me that you support our blue, because I support our blue. Just because I butt heads with the police chief, I'm doing it because I am supporting the blue.
yeah, the officers. So, but you had Stevie Manning that was, he was in the schools,
Stevie Manning, Jack Manning, terrific police officers. Jack George's, Steve George's, terrific
yeah.
police officers. Tommy Walsh, terrific police officer. I
Okay.
can go on and on about
We had a good
really
department.
good Chris Chronopoulos, Chuck Chronopoulos,
I go all the way back to Joey Pivarato.
Joey Pivarato. I mean, there's a lot of extremely good police officers that we had in our town, and as a matter of fact, several of those police officers wrote letters in support of Mark Bork, and they were completely ignored.
Yeah.
In my opinion, they were ignored because they voted opposite
Yeah.
and made recommendations opposite. There's in the decision.
From David Melanson, he says on Facebook, there's no longer a respectful fear for the police as there was years ago. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Well,
Well, who goes to jail?
see,
there's
no
there's no
accountability.
accountability.
Will there be any accountability?
accountability.
A
And
person's
that's-
reputation was ruined.
that's a
and
big problem.
I don't know how and I hate to keep going back to that because people, that gets lost in the dollars and cents. And I just, again, the stress and the respectability that you can't repay, you can't put a price on all that.
So, what's hard for me to get my hands around is all these people that I mentioned that voted to fire this police officer. Once this decision comes through, and a judge has told them that they're 100% wrong, would that change their thinking? And unfortunately, I don't think it will. I hope I'm wrong. But I think these people will all still support the action that they took, even though, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've my experience with some of them, and not all of them, but some of them, is that they're going to dig their heels in, and they're going to believe that, you know, we had to trust the chief, or we had to listen to, you know, our labor council, which was telling us he could be fired. And again, I don't know where any of that came from, because certainly there was no connection from the attorney to the town, and, you know.
Rodney Elliott is in the house. Representative Rodney Elliott.
Okay, I'm going to move.
Oh,
Yeah.
Rick wants to be next to Roy because they went to school together.
Yes,
That's why I
we
asked
did.
if you wanted to
We
be on
did.
with them.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
We'll have a
there's
few-
history here.
We'll have a few stories for you.
The question is, has Rodney ever reffed any of your games that you were coaching?
No, hey, Rodney, you sit here. No. So,
Good morning, Rodney.
Oh,
Rodney Elliott,
You
State
didn't want to
Rep.
answer that question, did
So-
you?
Before we get into anything, congratulations, you have a new grandchild coming.
Oh, I do have a new grandchild coming, yeah, she
How exciting.
told us around Thanksgiving, but until they had the ultrasound and all that.
You like to be surrounded by pretty
I
women,
most certainly do, I have,
all daughters, all
I grew up with
granddaughters.
4 sisters, and my wife, 2 girls, and now 3 granddaughters.
It's not on.
Let's start this over.
there we go.
Yeah, I do like to be surrounded by girls. I have 3 granddaughters, and,
It keeps shutting off.
Just press the button.
Press it again. Like everything
how's
else,
that?
it's cold.
Like everything else.
It's cold this morning.
I have another granddaughter coming.
Yeah.
You know, before they found out the gender, you know, we sort of did a little poll, or everybody wrote down what they thought, and I was a lone person saying, nope, it's just going to be another girl, because both of my girls are nurses, and one of them works at labor delivery, and they look at, you know, certain characteristics at this point, and they all thought it was a boy, but we found out last Friday that it's another girl.
Congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
And she's
Great.
due when?
It's good stuff. July.
Very nice.
Mid-July, yeah.
So you're starting a new session, right? Anything?
Started a new session, yep. Bill filing deadline was Friday. That's one of the, I do understand it because of the timing issue. And you can always file bills after the initial filing deadline, but it's the 3rd Friday in January, and you're gonna get all your bills in. Because from that point, then it has to, you know, they have to be sent to committee, and committee has to set up public hearing for each one, and then they have to report out at a certain deadline and blah, blah, blah. So it's a little bit of a short window, but, you know, if I guess, you know, it's hard as a freshman because I suppose you can line up some things that you campaigned on, but, you know, now being a sophomore, you kind of work on those things throughout the year, and then you have them ready to go and you put them in.
You were in the State House years ago. Any of the people still there? Do you still have the same contacts, or
I
is
can
that
tell you one
person?
person that is still there. I was a legislative aide I was an intern in 1981, and then from 82 to 85, I worked for the State Senate as a legislative aide for a gentleman by the name of Phil Shea, who is still around. But there's a few that are still down there, but the person I remember most is the Sergeant at Arms, a gentleman by the name of Ray Emerald, and he's been the Sergeant at Arms for, oh gosh, I think like 60 years. He's 91 years old, and he's still there. So,
Whoa.
but not too many down there. No, I
No.
mean there are a couple of legislators that are there, but in large part, that's
Yeah?
no.
Interesting.
almost 50 years ago.
I wasn't going to mention that, Rodney, but
You're not really like a sophomore. You're like a, you know, redshirt senior, you know?
Yeah, no, you know, you're right. No, that's very true because, you know, you go down there and having spent so much time, and some of it is at the State House, but having spent so much time on the local level, both of these individuals know that's where the that's where the rubber meets the road, as they say. So going down with that experience, and I've worked in state government, federal government, local government, nonprofits. I wasn't going down as a freshman, and so you learn, and I read the bills that come forward, and you take the appropriate votes, but it's also spending time down there, going to these advocacy meetings or briefings, and I spend you spend a great deal of time doing that as well. It's not, we're not in session a lot, hours-wise, but yeah, it's you make the job.
Establishing relationships.
I was gonna say, you're out there quite a bit. I see you, out there in the community, which, that's what people want for their state legislators. They want to feel like they're a part of the community, because,
But you don't see it. I had.
well, you see it with Rodney.
I know, but Colleen-
You're right.
Everywhere.
It's like you have two constituencies. You have to establish relationships is probably the most important element of this job down at the State House. Getting to know people, getting to know the chairman, getting to know the staff, quite frankly. And
Like a
and then-
doctor, always find out the nurse or the administrator's name.
Right.
That's how you're going to get.
And then you shift gears, and people want their local officials to be accessible. And I'm in Chelmsford, a lot, because I have about a third of Chelmsford, so it's that balance. But I'm busy because you got to make yourself. Other legislators, I'm not saying in this area, they've been there for a while and they don't do the outreach, or they're not out there as much. But if you want to hear, if you want to learn, you got to be there.
You don't have the delegation that Lowell was used to, that was as cohesive.
Yeah.
So you I had Colleen on it, and she was talking about that. She used to be included pretty much in the Lowell delegation as part of it, and now it's a little more fractured than it used to be.
I reach out to Colleen a lot, maybe because I know her from years
Yeah.
past, and I see her, and I speak to her staff, and I go to events in Drake, and I'll go to events anywhere that
Well, you have sort
Reault
of,
has a.
with Kingsborough, and you're representing North Chelmsford mostly, right?
Right.
So there's a lot in common there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question
Without a
from the
doubt.
audience, why won't the legislature let an audit happen?
Well, I know leadership on both the House and Senate side, they're trying to determine what is constitutionally permissible or not, and we gave the auditor authority. I think what we are going to do is we're going to change the rules, and I know the Senate's looking at the change rules to make it more transparent. Committee hearings, committee votes, calendar, those are the things that I kind of looked at and said we can, do a better job with the legislature. I don't have any,
So do you think it'll happen before the next election for state
well,
senate?
I think there's a misnomer. The legislature is audited every single year.
By
It's
our
on-
friends.
It's on the
I
website.
got an accountant, I got an auditor, and I hire them. They're going to put a halo on my company. They're going to make us look fabulous. This is a forensic audit looking for problems. A forensic audit is, they're looking for criminal activity. You guys don't have a forensic audit.
Well, first of all, I don't think there's any criminal activity going on, so I don't know, there's, in my opinion, but audits are done. The city of Lowell does not have a forensic audit done. Companies, municipalities, state agencies, they're not forensic audits. They're very expensive, unless there's a problem, if there's a problem in a particular area. But I know that the, leadership will continue to work with, I know the Senate set up a subcommittee to, the auditor sent a letter to the Senate, maybe the House as well, listing various things that she's looking at. Contracts, procurements, those things are all governed by state law. So I know that we're going to continue to look at it. It's not happening. We gave the auditor, to speak to your point, John, you say, you hire an auditor and they're going to make you, they're going to make your company or your organization look good. Well, we gave the auditor the authority to pick her own audit firm. And that's what the city does. That's what municipalities do. They, they have an independent audit firm. I believe at one point in time, I know the city of Lowell had a committee, and they would have 2 or 3 solicitations, and then the auditor would pick whoever the auditor, and they would come in and do their, whether it's some field audits, some you know, I'm not an auditor, so I can't speak to the technicalities. And they produce a management letter, and
I
that's.
believe you guys have your own audit staff.
Pardon me?
I believe the state has its own audit staff.
I don't know if I don't think there's a business office, but there's not an audit. There's not an audit. I mean, there is a controller of the Commonwealth. That is similar to, you know, so an audit function at the local level, but I don't have any problem. I mean, if there's nothing to hide, then, you know, then,
Well, that's what.
you know, there
I
are some
think-
things I think the auditor wants to get into. Why committee, because she spent some time there, why, you know, what committees, who's appointed to what committees, and what staff gets whom, and, you know, I think that's an organizational function.
Are we still dealing with the districting and the redistricting? Is that still an issue as it was with veteran?
The redistricting happens every 10 years, based upon the census, and districts, House districts, Senate districts, even congressional districts, I believe, were, to make sure that they're all in balance, that everyone is.
So if we're losing population in the
That was done 2
state,
years ago. So
Yeah.
we're in 2024. I know last year, or maybe it was when I ran 2 years ago, the districts did change, because
Yeah.
I know some of Chelmsford was taken out of the Belvedere district, and Tewksbury was added in, so they did change. I'm not sure, I don't think Chelmsford or Draker changed, I mean. excuse me,
Kingsborough never
Kingsborough?
changed, no, we're.
No, I don't think so.
Kingsborough, Draker.
It depended upon the geographic, the population shifts. Is that not
okay.
working?
Colleen
It's a
lost
little shaky, we're
Dunstable,
good.
I won't
lost
touch it.
Dunstable, what, like 4 or 6 years ago, I think
Yeah.
was when Dunstable moved out of Colleen's district.
Right.
Representative Gary, excuse me.
Right. So, I mean, it's every 10 years they look at populations, and was there a shift, was there an increase or decrease, and those boundary lines change.
But that was the issue, that was a big issue politically with, was it done right and was it done just to benefit certain legislators? And I wonder, is that the type of thing she's looking for? I'm not sure what she's looking for in the audit.
No, I don't think she's looking at redistricting. I mean, from what I understand, the letters that I've seen, she wants to look at, you know, contracts and procurement and,
Okay, so that's not affecting the individual legislators.
no.
So okay, I think there's confusion there. It's what exactly is she concerned about auditing? So,
I don't disagree, and it's, I mean,
Well,
we
you know,
get,
when the IRS sends you a letter, you don't say, you know what, you can't look at this, you can't look at that, you can't look at this. When you get pulled
they
over,
seize your accounts, I
you get pulled
know.
over by a cop, okay, you can't say, officer, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you my personal information. That's what the state
I
legislature.
think inevitably it's going to end up in the courts. What is she entitled to? What she should be looking at? You know, personnel decisions. You know, that's the House and the Senate. It's similarly to individual departments. I think that, you know, they make their hiring decisions and they put resources or positions where they think that are necessary, and that's the same thing with the House and the Senate. That being said, you know, the voters made, I think, a strong statement that 72% of the people said audit the book, so, you know, what.
Then
let's
just
find
press
that
on and
common
do it.
ground between what is, you know, constitutionally allowable and what should be looked at. You know, there are some things, like I said, if things are being awarded properly under Chapter 30B, then, which are the state procurement guidelines, then open it up.
Now, what is there any legislature that's affecting your district or the Lowell area that you know of? Is there anything that people should be following? Any bills?
Any bills? Well, yeah, we filed, you know, some local bills, some bills like from teacher organizations or advocacy groups, pancreatic cancer, things like that. In large part, I mean, I will file bills relative to my district. I know there was one that's important to a woman who was 89 years old. She's very interested in pet cemeteries. And
Kingsborough. She's got her eye on Kingsborough.
she has it in Tewksbury, yes, Mary Donovan. And there's a large one in North Chelmsford. And she just wants to protect those are on private property where there have been burials and of pets, and people have paid, and perpetual care, so
Yeah,
to speak.
I
And then,
agree with that.
The land does change generationally, and I guess there was one case, I think it was a development or a house built in Tewksbury that, there were quite a
It's
few
right
pets.
on the North Chelmsford line.
Yes, that's
yeah,
right.
Yeah. So that's a bill. They went to study last session. But, that's kind of example of local bills. And then I don't reinvent the wheel. Last year I filed something at PFAS and some other major bills that were folded into a larger omnibus bill because, something like PFAS is very comprehensive. So, that's an example of, I've also filed some things for disabled veterans, license plates, some tweaks. So, yeah.
Such as?
I I was contacted by a couple of veterans that said, look, mental health, people that are affected with mental health issues, that we have veterans, we should be considered to be allowed to have a license plate because they're disabled.
Disabled, okay.
So
Including all the the PTSD and stuff like that.
That's exactly. Should they be given an opportunity to get a license plate for being a disabled veteran? And I say yes. So, that's an example. But if we go to a break, I'll pull up all the other bills that I filed. And then I work with, Senator Kennedy. He has a larger district naturally with the towns, but he also has some, in the city that we co-sponsor. And sometimes he files on the House side, Senate side, and we file on the House side. But here's another example of a bill, the Low Housing Authority. Folks may remember a development called River's Edge. This is where we took Shaughnessy Terrace, was the worst housing.
It was time. It was time.
It was time,
It was
but it was
time.
very controversial. I was on the city council at the time. It was 20 years ago. It was one of the biggest votes. The Archdiocese and other housing organizations were adamantly against it. But Shaughnessy Terrace was a deplorable place. It was built right after World War II for veterans to come back and have a place to live. And, the state and the federal government, they don't really by far, they don't give money for capital improvements. And it just went into disrepair. It was prostitution, drug dealing. So the legislature and the state adopted a bill to allow us to convert that into 185 units of affordable mixed housing, some home ownership, some duplexes, and some affordable housing. So there was five phases. The last phase 5 ran into some difficulties in phase 4 and others. So long story short, we need to change that to add the last phase from 28 to 32, and it requires state legislation to do that. It made it through the Senate, came all the way to the House, and it didn't make it out of House of Ways and Means, which was unfortunate because we're talking about affordable housing and at a time when we need it. This is phase 5 of River's Edge. That was, quite frankly, it was done by Diane Silver and a nonprofit organization. So hopefully we're going to get that bill passed again. We're going to get it passed this session and get those units because I'm still on the Housing Authority, and that's we're trying to get these.
But that doesn't even make sense. The governor wants all this housing and.
It makes no sense. I have no idea why it did not come out of House Ways and Means. Rep. Howard's on Ways and Means, and she tried and I tried, and there's no money associated with it, no cost to the state. We just need to change the enabling legislation to allow, because, the legislation said, well, you can't put 300 units on this. We don't want this crazy density again, and they put a limit. So this legislation will change it, allow us to expand from 28 to 32, and that project is going to get done.
Now, Rodney, we're looking at a screen. On the screen is Google Earth.
Yeah.
So
There it
where
is.
are you talking about?
River's Edge Road.
So River's Edge Road is right here. So
Correct.
where we
You
have
see
problems,
those,
down
You see
here?
those streets, McGuigan, Chippewa, that is actually the project. 80 Way,
Okay.
and then the last phase, if you want to scroll to I'd say the east from my look, keep going,
Over to the river?
right, stop. You see that vacant parcel of property with what?
No, over, no.
Other
at the end
side of the river,
there.
right there. That will be Phase 5. And you can see those two big mounds of dirt that, that have been piled there by the developer. That's where Phase 5 will be.
And
that's
it'll
in
be 32
Is it going
units.
right down to the
32
shore?
units, yes.
We're gonna have a beach?
No, you see that, you probably can't see it too much, but there's a retaining wall, right there. That is a significant retaining wall, and it's been all approved, and it's ready for development. We just need the state to approve legislation to allow us to expand, the total footprint from, by
So
4 units.
when we sell these houses, so the government's gonna pay to build more houses here, is that what we're saying?
No, the government is not paying it
So
one
who's
penny
paying?
for this. This
who's-
is,
A developer?
correct. We have the developer will do the construction, but it's done through, well, I shouldn't say no to government, because we will go through some programming and get loans,
just
low
to-
interest loans.
to get to the
But it's
chase
gonna be
here.
paid by the sale of those.
When I buy this house right here, who gets the money? When I buy this house, whatever I pay for it, who gets the money? Lowell Housing, the developer, who do I write the check?
It's not the low housing, it's not Renew.
Rodney, may I, just for a second? So this is affordable housing, right?
It's affordable housing.
So there's limitations to the profit, right?
Correct.
So if a developer, he goes under a 40B project or whatever, they have to do a lot of filings, and they can only earn a certain amount of profit, and that's why it's affordable. And so, yeah, the developer's going to make a limited profit, which law will dictate how much they can make.
On the affordable units.
On any, yes, on any unit, if it's a sellable unit, right? So when I became a selectman, I got involved in affordable housing because no one else wanted to do it. And then I was fascinated with it, it became my interest. And so the state wants each city and town to have 10% affordable housing, which Tewksbury did not at the time. And then they count that affordable housing a certain way. So if they're rental properties, even if a portion of, let's say you have 25 units, and if 25% of them are affordable rental units, then all 25 of those units count towards your affordable housing. If it's home ownership, there's a higher standard to that, and it's only the ownership, and you have to put it in the deed that it's affordable, and it has to remain affordable.
When the
Going
plan is
forward.
finally approved, but I do remember in Tewksbury, when that project on the river, originally they came in, they said it was gonna be all rental or major parts, so that we could, as you say, all the units would be, and then all of a sudden mysteriously it gets changed somewhere, I guess, in the Board of Appeals.
We're gonna hold the thought, right, Linda, I'm gonna do the announcements.
Okay.
I'll do the announcement. If you guys can all slide your chairs towards Rick, that'd be good. Get you all in the shot.
Oh, we all get to snuggle?
So you guys
we
can
go.
snuggle up a little bit better. They should say huddle up, I guess that's the
Aye-oh.
right word to use. Okay, so if you want an announcement on City Life, real easy thing to do, just call my cell phone. Easy thing to do. Coming up this weekend is the Keefe Family Polar Plunge. That's January 25th down at Seabrook. And you want more information about this, their website is on the bottom there. Let me focus that a little bit better on the screen. The KeefeFamilyPolarPlunge.org, and they help a lot of people, and there's a lot of candy that's going to happen on the 25th. It starts at 11 o'clock, and goes pretty quick, so you don't want to be late for this thing. This is, if you're a little down on your luck and you need some free food, these people can help you out. So take your fancy phone over to the TV set, take a picture of this. If you want to volunteer, one of these organizations can use a volunteer. So if you want to volunteer and help out, all the better. So just take a picture, their phone number's there, and be in touch with them and see if you want to help them out, or maybe they'll help you. Free bus rides, every LRTA bus. All you gotta do is give a hearty wave to the bus driver. The bus driver will pick you up, and you're riding the bus for free until September 30th. So a good program by the LRTA. Lowell Senior Center, they have lunch 7 days a week. So today's the 22nd, so if you go over to the Senior Center today, they're gonna have chicken a la king. That's today, $2, just walk in the front door, give Tara $2, and you're good to go. And if you don't have the $2, just tell Tara you don't have the money and she'll give you a ticket anyway. So everybody gets to eat. I'm forgetting the name of these people. Having a brain cramp, but hey, that's okay. These people here, they get mill number 5. They're getting booted out of mill number 5. For, I don't know why, but they're getting put out of mill number 5 because the mill number 5 got sold. And they're moving over to what was once St. Louis Church on East Merrimack. No, I'm sorry, on Merrimack Street, Upper Merrimack Street by the old, well, you know, St. Jean the Baptist. Thank you, Rodney. St. Jean the Baptist Church. So they need a little bit of help. They have a GoFundMe page. So if you go to Lowell Live Feed Forum, scroll down a little bit, you're going to find this GoFundMe page. And a good group of people. They just they need a little help right now, so please consider them. Moving right along here. Coming up every Thursday night, the Golden Gloves. It's not expensive to get in there. I don't know what the price is, but not expensive. It says, no, I'm sorry, this is Tewksbury. Mark sent this yesterday to me. Thank you, Mark. The Tewksbury Lions Club is having music bingo, and it's going to be Friday, February 7th, 2025. And it's going to be at the Tewksbury Wilmington Elks, 777 South Street in Tewksbury. $250 for a table of 10. Starts at 6:30 and continues. There's a QR code, so if you take your smartphone, put it in camera mode and look at this QR code right here, it'll bring you to a website that gives you more details. So I want to thank my friend Mark Kratman for sending this in here. And moving on to the next announcement is the Golden Gloves. Keith Ruthy sent me this, and Keith is going to wants me to promote this. The Lowell Winter Tradition, presented by the Lowell Sun Charities, the Golden Gloves for 2025, every Thursday through March 6th. So every Thursday, doors open at 6 o'clock, pay at the door, and it's a great time. Bring your kids, whoever you want to bring. It's a nice event, and there's a QR code. You can just take your fancy phone. You take your smartphone out, put it in camera mode, and zero in on this guy. It'll give you a lot more details. And that's the end of the announcements. Now, I got some announcements I'm going to go to here. Let me put this screen up. And I got to open these 3 announcements. I'm going to read these these messages. And then we'll go back to the show. So I'm going to put your mics back on because this concerns you guys.
Yeah.
So
We're stuck. We got
Oh, we're back on, folks.
your mics are back on so we can hear what you're saying. So good morning, everyone. Another
We're
great
talking
show.
about
Well, this is from Mark Kratman.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Mark, good guy. And Mark's pushing back for being a selectman for a little bit, but I want to tell you this, you can tempt him to run. You got to encourage Mark to keep his hat in the ring. But right now,
Yes.
He's a hard-working member of the select
Good guy.
board.
Well, that's why it
good guy.
operates so well in Tewksbury. It's like Oz. Over
Well,
there.
Mark
That's why I
had
keep
an
calling.
accident about a year ago. He fell down. He had a case of garbage bags. He was bringing to somebody that needed, some organization needed them. I think it was Lowell Litter Crew needed some garbage bags. So he's got the case of garbage bags, got it up on his shoulder,
Yeah.
and the case opened. And the 250 bags on his shoulder fell out. He immediately lost his balance, hit his head on a pole, and he had a concussion. He's still recovering from that. So God bless him. Mark Kratman, you're a good guy, Cadillac of a guy. You can't get better. And Mark, when you get better, we'll love to have you back anytime you're ready.
Yes.
Another comment from the audience. The elected officials in the State House can run mass without consequence. It doesn't matter how many ballot initiatives we have. The State House is 85% and 90% House and Senate in favor of one party. This is what the people voted in. Continuing with the last message I have right now. and this might be a little, I don't, it's a little wordy. Listeners are interested why your guest allowed a former chief to maliciously target officers and continually support his repeated violations of department's collective bargaining agreements, which cost the town when they lost every arbitration. Maybe they can also speak to all the wages paid to officers he falsely targeted and had to pay while he put them on administrative leave. The support has costed the town people more than $1 million. Thank you for your comments. Back to you guys.
So, John, if I can, I think we have commented on this, the cost. I think we have commented that these were, these votes that took place to fire police officers egregiously were taken after an election. An election has consequences. So, again, both Hillary and I did everything we could to fight for these people, to bring light the facts. We also brought the police chief in, to talk to us publicly. And so we took multiple measures on this, and yet the reporting, in the Lowell Sun, 100% supported the police chief. And then, then there was an election, and so people, that must have resonated with certain people in town, and certain people came up to me and said, we don't like this negative publicity. And I'm like, well, nobody does. Who's creating the negative publicity?
Well,
right?
when I mentioned
Do you want me to sit back and say nothing? No, I'm going forward and saying things.
there was a pattern because we had Walsh and we had Wagner and we had several officers that were targeted, and they retired. They were forced into retirement. They were not fired, but they were forced into retirement. And so it was a bad time.
And if you see.
And who do you take, what do you do? Like when poor David was running and they're following him home to see if he lives there. I mean, if your police department isn't on the up and up, then it gets a little frightening, and they're taking their direction from the top.
Yeah, I still on that election, I was surprised on how much support that other side had. And I want to repeat that after that election, the police chief and the administrator were out celebrating with the people that won that election. And one of them was a next door neighbor and a close personal friend. They've posted pictures of each other, out together socially. And so when I talk to these, I try to establish a relationship, and that's what I was talking to Rodney about, later. When you try to establish relationships, but ultimately they have to make a choice. Do they want to believe me, or do they want to believe the police chief who I have a disagreement with? And they chose to agree with the police chief. Well, now an arbiter comes in and looks at the whole thing and says, no, the police chief was wrong. 100% wrong.
Yeah.
And now you have to pay this person. Now, how about all these other people that have not filed for arbitration or filed lawsuits? They may turn around and say, wow, this officer was successful, maybe I'll do it too. And because, again, a lot of people did retire early.
Yes.
Because they feared ultimately if they didn't retire early, it would cost them their job. And I'm not talking out of school there. That's a fact.
No, my neighbor was one of them. And
That's a fact.
I think he's a lot happier, to be perfectly honest, that he's out of it, so. Stress, I'm telling you, we'll go back to the stress issue.
Both Charlie Chronopoulos' sons retired early. And if you ever see them, you can ask them personally why they did it. Different reasons, but kind of similar circumstances.
Well, I suppose some of us have been in situations that it's so awkward and uncomfortable. They force you to move, change jobs. So I bet it's like that down the State House sometimes.
Look, there's always controversy everywhere, right?
While we got Rodney's here, I want to know, what are your personal feelings about Trump kicking the illegals out of the country? What do you think, and from your personal view, if you would not mind giving your personal view, and then page 2, how long do you think the governor's going to get arrested for pushing back on Trump? And if you don't want to comment, that's fine.
The governor's going to get arrested? I don't think the governor's going to get
I
arrested.
think she's changed her tune a bit. She's trying to.
Look, that's a federal issue, and, immigration has clearly been an issue across the country. I'll just talk about on the state level where we need to address situations that are taking place in the emergency assistance shelters. The governor, we have to take some measures, and I know that she hired, I think Ed Davis's firm to do an analysis or an investigation on what is taking place. 1,000 reports of activity taking place in these shelters I will say it was shocking to me. I didn't think, we didn't hear any reports for a long time of what was taking place across the state until, you saw that incident in Revere, or was it in Chelsea, where they made that arrest of, the person with fentanyl. So I think on our end, that's what we need to deal with at the state level at this point in time. We also need to deal with the costs associated with this. We've spent upwards of $2 billion to support these shelters, and it's just not sustainable. We just don't have the money to do it. There's got to be a better system, and I know the state has received, because of the right and shelter law, we have received tens of thousands, but we've got to move forward because we just don't have the money anymore. Look, the Commonwealth was just faced with, during COVID, we received federal money and we paid out benefits to unemployment, people on unemployment. Well, and this was a prior administration, and I thought, you're getting COVID money, you got lots of people on unemployment, you're getting money from the federal government to support this, so why not use it to pay unemployment benefits? Well, apparently the federal government didn't, that wasn't allowed, so the state has now have to pay back $2.1 billion. Luckily, the governor negotiated a sort of a settlement over the course of 10 years, but we've got to pay that back to the federal government. That's huge. I know people say, well, we're dealing with a $57 billion budget. Yes, we are, but that's going to have a dramatic impact on things that we could have done. So between that, the continuing costs of the shelters, there's only so much that we can do.
Ronnie, I have an issue with the shelters, and yet the veterans and the homeless that we've had, and because you're on the housing authority, you have a waiting list of people, and they got
6,000 people.
sidestepped, and these other people came in, and the government didn't even bring the communities into didn't even let them know in Lowell when she took over the conference center. I think that's appalling, because you have, on the housing authority, you have people you're trying to deal with that have been waiting and need the housing. They should have the preference. If they were going to open the community center for housing, they should have been moved in, I would think.
Yeah, there's a waiting list. There's a process. The state actually has, say a database. It's called CHAMP, that, you go on the list and you've got to wait until units open. I will say in the housing authority end, we continue to, there's a fair amount of people that don't pay their rent.
Yeah.
And we go through the eviction process. And bear in mind, the rent is 30% of what your income is,
Right.
or it's a flat amount. The average rent is about $400, let's say between $400 and $500.
Which includes everything, including
Utilities.
cable TV?
No, it does not include cable TV. It doesn't include, you've got to pay a $25 a month fee if you want to use the washers and dryers as well. So
I thought you guys had cable TV too.
It does not include cable. Some folks may have cable TV, but it's not paid for by the housing authority.
I assumed it was, sorry, I'm glad for the clarification, thank you. So
You're welcome.
I get electricity, heat for $400
Water.
a month. Water,
Trash.
trash, yeah.
Yeah, trash. Yeah, there are
Sure.
there are some services that are paid for, but they also have to, at the very least, anyway, my point was, we go to land court and those people are not paying their rent, and at that point it gets to a, it's at, if you're missing a month's rent, that's not what we're doing. It's 4, 5, 6 months. The other thing that we try to do is, when there were 2 or 3 bedrooms that were once used for families, when those kids presumably grow up and move out, sometimes you have an individual or a couple living in a 3-bedroom apartment, and they don't need it. And I understand that they don't want to move, but those are the things that
Yeah.
sort of extend the waiting list. Sometimes when we do have people, they are evicted, or they move out, or pass away, or whatever the case may be. Some of those units have to be completely redone. They've been inhabited for 10, 20 years in some instances. So that's where, the federal and the state government, I think we get $250,000 a year from the state government to rehab all the units that we have. And so it's not enough, but this housing bond bill has $281 million for public housing authorities to start the capital improvement project, process. So it's, it's a big organization. I enjoy it, but the back to the waiting list, it's long and it's exhaustive, and less people are moving because there's less and less opportunities to move out of, out
Right.
there into
Question
somewhere
from the
else.
audience. Why is it okay, newcomers in brackets, to enter illegally, but it's not okay for them to be rounded up and shipped out? Respectfully, Mr. Elliott, the governor could have said, no, we don't want them. Thank you for your comment.
Well, unfortunately, that's not the case, because in 1983, by ballot initiative, the people voted a right to shelter law.
Right. Yeah, but it's Massachusetts. You have to understand the voters in Massachusetts.
the law.
But factually, we were in cahoots with the federal government that was paying for aircraft to fly to different countries, pick up people who wanted to come to America, dropping them off at Logan Airport. Immigration looked the other way.
Well, they didn't when they went to
The state of
Martha's
Massachusetts
Vineyard.
was
They
not
got rid
in
of them.
cahoots. Look, people did arrive, and we knew they were arriving. The governor knew. This started happening under the Baker
But
administration.
the media didn't report on it. Was all quiet.
So, well, when you have a law, you have to abide by the laws, right? I mean, that being said, the governor did take measures to say, look, our shelters are full. We don't have any other shelters. I know she took one location in Roxbury. It was a community center. It's the only community center there, and I believe just temporarily, because the community said, look, we need this community center for our kids. So we did place a limit on the number of individuals, I believe.
We
it was
didn't get the
7,500.
UMass Inn Conference Center back yet, did we?
The-
Thanks for our guests coming in today. Great topics of conversation. I always appreciate Rep. Elliott coming in and taking the tough questions. Back to you.
As do I.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have all the answers, but you have to stay attuned and give people your opinion. The Indian Conference Center was owned and run by UMass Lowell. It's actually a building authority, and there wasn't much consultation with the state or the local officials. So that was a 2-year lease. It was just, the 1-year option was just exercised this January, and the commitment was it's going to be 2-year. Just one person, I fully intend to, hold the state accountable to what they want to. There's 6, the last time we had a meeting there, maybe 6 months ago, 4 months ago, and there were 608 individuals in there. And, you have services on site, mass hire. They're teaching, there's languages being taught there as well. And so, we got to work towards that deadline, because we still need that hotel downtown.
Well, yeah. The revenue,
Matt
they'll
talks
lose.
about a hotel all the time on the other side, next to the arena, which is fine, but, that was at one time, it's still revenue producing, albeit not what it should be, but, that's a big part of our footprint downtown.
We beat up the governor, and I do, about that, but somehow Marty Meehan escapes any bad. He still is in charge of the universities.
Can you imagine what his pension's gonna be?
Isn't he the chancellor of
When he retires, his
president of the-
pension's
president
gonna
of
be
the
fabulous.
UMass system? So he had to have been part of the deal. And he's from Lowell, for goodness sakes. He's from Lowell. How could he do that to you guys?
I'm not certain that that falls under his preview. Not certain about that. You know, the president of the university isn't, doesn't have complete control of every
He got a
single-
bridge, for goodness sakes. I mean,
Yeah, I know. You know, one of my concerns, because it's not just in Lowell, but other cities and towns too, right? We talked about the rehab cost. So now, after all these people move out, what type of repairs and rehab, and who's going to put that bill? Because you want to go back to a working hotel, it's got to be nice. It's got to be, no one's going to want to stay in rooms that, aren't pristine.
you have to.
And even before the hotel was converted to a shelter, it needed several millions of dollars of upgrades. The HVAC,
Yeah.
some cosmetic and some not. So, we liked the facility. Our oldest daughter got married there.
Yeah.
And we stayed over, and it was great, I have to tell you. I mean, it was local, people could stay over, and, there were conferences after conferences.
Yep.
Perhaps the hotel market wasn't what it was, but look, the festivals, the foundation, now they have to go out of the city.
That's right.
And I know Artie Sutcliffe gets frustrated because you plan these events like the Lowell Festival that brings thousands of people into the city, and the entertainers want to stay local. They don't really want to go to Tewksbury or.
That's where they had to go, because I remember talking to the director of that, and they had to go to Tewksbury, and it's not acceptable. And I don't think the hypocrisy was lost on anyone in Massachusetts that, they brought them all in, and 50 went to Martha's Vineyard. They called them the National Guard. That is a bit hypocritical.
Comment from the audience, we had a hotel in downtown Lowell, the Hilton, that ended up housing for students, but great show today, thank you.
Yeah, that was part of the plan that, a 205, 200 room downtown is a little bit too much, So the university wanted to use some of that for graduate student housing, and then, X amount of rooms for the public, which it
Well, Rodney,
remained
you
for the
remember,
public.
just for the people who are younger than us, it was a marriage between Wang. Wang built a tower to train people.
Yeah,
And the
training center
Hilton
next
came in and
door.
built a hotel so the people flying in to learn how to run Wang computers could stay practically next door. And that was the
Look,
marriage.
it was a great plan until Microsoft appeared, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of
Yeah.
the end of it. I mean, Wang was the premier, let's say, computer industry at that point in time. and-
Yep. It was a great time for Lowell, a great growing time. and,
Oh, it's going to happen again if that plan that
And
they
we-
went up to Toronto.
We lost Wang, and we lost all the mills that used to make fabric, and times change.
Yep. I think the next renaissance, and I got a little bit of money in the economic development bond bill, will be, I know they removed parking restrictions downtown. What we have to do, and what many communities are doing, you got to bring people downtown. So now you have to start developing the second and third and fourth floors. There are two impediments. First of all, there are a lot of vaults in the city where the sidewalks, they used to, I don't really know what they were used for, but many of the buildings on Merrimack and other streets downtown, and this is probably, across gateway cities, they have these huge vaults. So when you go to rehab a building, it's an architectural impediment because they've got to re-engineer, and it's very costly to either fill in or build around these vaults
Oh,
downtown.
and downtown, all your.
Where they used to put, I believe they used to be service entries, to be honest with you. So between that, ADA compliance and elevators, those are the impediments why you don't see second and third floors, because it's a very big cost to try to fold into a redevelopment project, so.
Well, you look at Pollard's and A.G. Pollard's that was on the other side of Middle Street. they were all under the same heating system. It was all underground. You could walk through those tunnels. I had to do it one time to do some valve work.
We're running out of time today, Linda. Last comment for the day. If we build another hotel, will the university get it eventually? Like the arena, ballpark, and other hotels?
I know the university is interested in a piece of property in where the post office is, and they do want to build a smaller hotel, whether it's for, visiting, the concerts or the conventions, or just generally, Lowell can sustain a hotel. It's just the size, and, but that begs the question, what's going to happen to that facility downtown?
Yeah.
I don't know. By the way, the city doesn't own it, and before we transferred it to the state, there was a nursing home that was going to go in, and that was going to be a tax-paying entity. But we thought that it would be better to have it as an economic engine downtown, and it was for quite some time. So I think, I think it's important to have that, some element of that building be a commercial enterprise.
Well, I hope the governor supports you on your housing problem there in Shaughnessy Terrace, and
Yeah, I think that's going to go
particularly where she has
through.
this big bill.
It'll go
that-
through.
Yeah.
And with, the housing authorities, we're doing a couple other developments in the Merrimack Street corridor. So, you just got to keep putting these projects in the pipeline.
What about Nantucket voting? They don't want pickleball. Big vote down in Nantucket today.
I didn't know that.
Yes, they want to ban it.
And who cares?
I think what happens in Nantucket may happen in Lowell, I mean, pickleball is all over the country,
Aren't we putting,
but not in
we're putting
Nantucket.
several on the town-owned land across.
Come to
from the Century
Tingsboro, we
Club.
have pickleball courts.
just put-
I will
In our-
say,
in our new-
I'm very impressed because I live on the Tingsboro line
Yeah.
with the block parties and, sort of the redevelopment of the intersection, right in that town.
Morris
center.
City Life, we got
Very impressive.
Evelyn Thorne's going to be the host, Bob Hoey's going to be here, Sam Chase, and the guest for the day is a guy by the name of John Moses. Lowell's big thing is they're trying to make a street one-way just because a couple of people on the street want to make it one-way. They're sick of traffic. And
Oh.
the city council is caving and going to give them their way.
Oh, my.
It's an election year, kids.
What road is that?
It's a left off Rogers to go up to Fairmount. I don't want to mispronounce things.
Myrtle. Is it Myrtle Street?
That would be my guess, but I
think
don't
so,
want.
yeah, it's been
I want to thank my guests for coming in, getting up early. I always thank my guests for getting up early, coming in. Thank you all, taking the questions that we throw at you, because you're not prepped, like some of the shows do. And it was so bloody cold, so thank you for getting up and coming in and talking to the people. And thank you for those that sent the responses. It's nice to know somebody's out there.
All right,
Yeah,
thank
nice
you.
to see
Say goodbye.
Hillary and Rick as well, and you.
Hey, thanks for
Linda.
say goodbye, thanks.